You won't want to air it if I tell you.
You spent 5 years on that?
I've seen a woman let a. I was looking at a lot of prison time.
What does that mean? What'd you see inside the trap houses?
Everything you can imagine.
What does that mean?
I've witnessed murder. I've witnessed attempted rapes. I've witnessed overdoses. Um, I've witnessed people do unimaginable things that even with my background and experience can't wrap my mind around for a hit of dope, crack in particular.
Like what?
You won't want to air it if I tell you. I've seen a woman let a dog for dope. I've seen people do the most debased, dehumanizing things you can ever imagine because their addiction commanded them to. They have become complete and total slaves to a substance. And in turn, complete and total slaves to whoever controls that substance. I didn't know the true depths of human depravity until I was out there, until I lived in it and saw it. And all of my hope and faith in humanity died on that street. My hope for having a future died on that street. I was going to kill myself out there. I was interrupted and then ended up in handcuffs again.
How are you going to do it?
With a knife. I was just going to cut my own throat. It was the only way I could do it. Because I refused to touch heroin after I got arrested. I would not go back to it. I was still smoking crack, but I refused to touch heroin. And I was afraid that if I tried to overdose, because that's once you've shot up heroin, there's no other way to kill yourself. It's an embrace from God. Like, it's a painless way to go. My fear was that because my tolerance was so high, I would try to kill myself and I wouldn't, and I would end up addicted again. And I would rather die than have that happen. And so I was going to cut my throat with K-bar.
Yeah. How long were you in and out of those?
5 years. I get this. This is.
You spent 5 years on that shit in trap houses?
In and out. But my whole story is punctuated with highs and lows where everything looks great. I wasn't homeless for 5 years. I wasn't running from that warrant for 5 years. But all in, I was battling South Memphis for 5 years. That run stopped when they found me on that warrant. And we were talking about God winks. I feel like this was a missed God wink on my behalf. But maybe not, because if I'd taken it, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. Veterans Court refused to take my case. I did serve long enough to be eligible for Veterans Court. So even though I don't get like VA benefits, I was eligible for that. They wouldn't take my case because of the gun charges. They were convinced the feds were going to come after me. Now, I knew that wasn't the case because I legally owned the guns and I wasn't actually selling drugs. So I had faith that justice would prevail. But the drug court judge heard about my case and decided to take a chance on me. And he told me that if I would sign up for his program, he would send me to rehab and he'd pay for it. And I jumped at it. And so after spending 2 months out there in the traps, that run, I was actually excited. I thought, things are going to be better. And he sent me to rehab. I spent 54 days in there. And I was serious about it. I wanted to be clean. I did not want to go back to that life at all. I graduated the rehab program and got off to a fairly good start on drug court. I think I got released back into the free world early November. And I made contact with Aaron. I wanted to get back in the kids' lives. And because this just hit them completely out of the blue. Like, they didn't see any of this coming, So from July to November, there had been very minimal interaction with my kids. They didn't know what the fuck was going on. Or I don't know what they knew. Let's put it that way. And, Erin had filed for divorce. Her attorney told her it would help her if she got a restraining order against me. And so she did that. And they served me with it in the middle of drug court in front of everybody on my birthday. Like, that was humiliating. Mostly because I've never laid a finger on her. I've never threatened any of them. I've never, made her be afraid of me or the kids or any of that. But she had to attest that I've done all of those things on this piece of paper. So I did what any good addict would do, and I went and got high over that. Now, when they released me from rehab, they court ordered me into Rebos, which is a halfway house in Memphis, sober spelled backwards. And one of the biggest rules in a sober living house is you can't get high. And I did that. And so I knew I was about to go back to jail. So right back to South Memphis I went. I just went on the run. And then I actually had a conversation with Erin that her attorney did that without her knowledge or something. I don't remember what it was. And I started realizing like how bad I fucked up by going on the run and getting high again. I went and turned myself in. And sure enough, obviously I went to jail, but the drug court judge he's going to give me another chance. Like, he sees this a lot. He expected it, blah, blah, blah. I was banned from that halfway house. And they were like, we're just going to leave you in jail until we figure out what to do with you. Because you can't go home. You can't go back to the halfway house. We don't know what to do with you. And so I spent my birthday, or not my birthday, I spent Thanksgiving in jail. They kept me. God, they probably kept me a month that time with no bond. Like, there's no hope of getting out. You get out when the judge says you can get out. And I've pissed the judge off at this point because he took a chance on me. Even though he expected it to happen, he's mad. They finally let me out December 17th, and I'll never forget this. That day in court, because the jail backs up to the courthouse. It's literally like underneath the court, kind of. So they took me into the courtroom from jail. And this guy named Brian Owens comes up to me and asks me, he's like, "You tired of living like this, dude?" I was like, yeah, I'm really tired of living like this. And he looked me in the eye for a minute. He's like, "You don't have to." And I don't know why that simple yet incredibly profound statement hit me like a ton of bricks, dude. Like, I started bawling like in the middle of court. Like, it was weird, but it just hit me so, because I could tell by the way he said it. This guy that I'm just now meeting for the first time, in the way he said that, I could tell he's been where I was. He literally where I was. I come to find out later, he had been standing on the other side of that wall years ago as a client in drug court, and today he works for that court. But I could tell this guy knew something. He knew a way out of this, and he told me that he was going to get me out of jail that day, and then he wanted me to meet him at a Narcotics Anonymous meeting that night. Now, I'd been to NA back in California, but I just used it as a place to pick up chicks. Like, I didn't pay any attention. But I would do whatever I had to do to get Brian to get me out of jail. And I would do whatever I had to do to not live that way anymore. And I meant it, like with every fiber of my being. I meant that shit. I was dead set on, I'm going to do this. And so he got me out of jail. I found out after I left the jail that day that the judge was dead serious when he said, I can't go home and I can't go to the halfway house. But they forgot to figure out what to do with me, so I had to figure that out, which I'm sure was 100% intentional, right? They wanted to see what I was going to do. So now I'm a free man, and it's the middle of December, right before Christmas, and I have nowhere to go. I'm on the streets. Am I going to fuck up or am I going to do right? And I think that's what they were trying to figure out. And I did right. I got with my dad and got into an extended stay motel. I went to an NA meeting. First time I ever saw her. And I was serious about doing it. And I decided I wanted to try to fix things with Erin. She's the mother of 5 of my kids, and divorcing her was something I could not wrap my mind around. No matter how bad she wanted it, she spent all those years thinking I was the one for her, knowing the problems that I had, and here we are with the problems front and center. What are we going to do? I had that conversation with her. We decided to reconcile. And so I think it was Christmas Eve of 2014, I moved back into the house with her and the kids. Which in hindsight, it's a terrible idea.
Did you blame her for the restraining order? Were you upset about that?
I was upset about it. I was hurt more than anything. I didn't blame her for the relapse. I will never blame anybody else for that. I make my own decisions, and when I choose to go get high about something, that's on me, not them. When we went to court for the restraining order, because the way they do these things, they'll issue it just based on the word of the woman, and that's good. I'm glad they do that. And then you have a hearing about it to decide if it's going to stand or get tossed out. And when we sat down in the courtroom, they start asking Erin all these questions like, when did Mr. Owen strike you? When did he do this? And she's like, no, none of that ever happened. And the judge is basically like, well, then you can't have a restraining order. What are we doing? And so it just got like, what I was afraid of was that Erin was going to lie and say I had, put my hands on her or something, which nothing like that ever happened in that marriage.
Were you sharing needles?
No, never, not once. In fact, this is one of the reasons I was able to hide it so well. I was the worst person I knew. I didn't have
Do you
friends.
think you put your family in danger?
Yeah, I definitely put them in danger. There's no doubt about that.
So how could you blame her?
I don't. Yeah, I don't blame her at all. In fact, hindsight being 2020, I wish she hadn't let me move back in. I had no business being around my kids right then at all, or her. I didn't deserve to be sleeping in that house that we had worked to pay for together. Yeah. 1,000 things could have gone wrong.
Something must have went wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't handle guilt well. Never have. I drink at guilt. I always have. And I don't think things were meant to work out between me and her. Too much damage had been done. And it was a terrifying thing to try to accept that, because you start trying to think, how am I going to raise a family with her? With the exception of this 10-month period, all things considered, I've been a pretty stellar dad. Outside looking in. Now you know that that's not true because you've heard all the fucked up stuff that I was doing, but I was still telling myself the lie that I wanted the world to see. And I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to raise these kids in a broken home now? What's going to happen with my cases? I was looking at a lot of prison time if I fucked up drug court.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.